Daniel had always believed in love, the kind that lasts a lifetime. When he met Sophia, he thought he had found it. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a smile that could light up the darkest days. Their wedding was like a dream, and when Lucas was born, it felt like their love had found its greatest purpose. For years, their life was picture-perfect. Daniel worked hard to provide for his family, and Sophia managed everything at home with grace. They weren't just husband and wife, they were partners, best friends. Or so Daniel thought. Lately, things had changed. Sophia had grown distant, not in obvious ways, but in the little things that made all the difference. She no longer kissed him goodbye in the morning. Her laughter seemed forced, and the warmth in her eyes had faded. Daniel told himself it was just stress, that every marriage had its rough patches. Lucas, their 10-year-old son, was Daniel's pride and joy. They spent weekends at the park, playing baseball, or building Lego castles. But recently, even Lucas noticed his mother's absence. She worked late more often, missed family dinners, and even their weekend outings. One night, as Daniel was tucking Lucas into bed, the boy asked, "Dad, why doesn't Mom come with us anymore?" Daniel hesitated, forcing a smile. "She's just busy, buddy. Work is keeping her occupied." Lucas frowned. "But she used to come all the time." "She doesn't laugh with us like before." That question lingered in Daniel's mind long after Lucas had fallen asleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when things had started to slip away. It wasn't just work keeping Sophia away. It was something else, someone else. Then came the late-night phone calls. Sophia would step out of the room, laughing softly, her voice light in a way Daniel hadn't heard in years. When he asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off. Just a friend from work. A friend. That word gnawed at him. He wanted to trust her, but something deep inside told him otherwise. Doubt crept in like a slow poison, eating away at the trust they had built over the years. One evening, he watched as Sophia got ready for what she claimed was a late meeting. She took extra time doing her hair, applied perfume she rarely wore anymore. When she left, Daniel sat in silence, his heart heavy. He picked up her phone, something he had never done before. He told himself he was just looking for reassurance, proof that he was overthinking. Instead, he found a message thread. The texts were brief, but clear. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again. I wish I could be with you every night." His chest tightened. His hands trembled. The betrayal was real. Daniel stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The words blurred before his eyes, but their meaning was clear. His wife, the woman he had trusted with his heart, his son, his life, was in love with someone else. He scrolled up, reading the earlier messages. The name at the top of the screen was Ryan, a name she had never mentioned before. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. When had this started? How long had she been lying to him? The weight of it all crushed him, but he forced himself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't solve anything. He needed to know the full truth. The next few days, he paid closer attention. Sophia had a pattern, leaving home at odd hours, returning with excuses. He watched as she became more secretive, texting when she thought no one was looking. When he confronted her about the late nights, she was quick to dismiss his concerns. "It's just work, Daniel. You're overthinking." But he wasn't. He felt it in his gut. Not wanting to make accusations without proof, he did something he never thought he'd do. He hired a private investigator. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about catching her. It was about knowing. Because once he knew, he could decide what to do next. 2 days later, the investigator sent him the first pictures. They were taken outside a hotel, Sophia with Ryan holding hands, laughing. Another image showed them entering the building together. A timestamp confirmed what he already suspected. She wasn't working late. She wasn't stuck in meetings. She was with him. Daniel sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the images. He had spent years building a life with this woman, trusting her, loving her. And in return, she had been sneaking around, sharing moments with another man while he was home taking care of their son. But Lucas, that was all that mattered now. He didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve to wake up one day and have his world torn apart. Daniel couldn't let his son suffer because of his mother's choices. That night, he watched Sophia as she moved around the house like nothing had changed, as if she weren't betraying him every time she left. He thought about confronting her, throwing the evidence in her face, demanding answers. But what would that accomplish? Would it fix anything? Instead, he made a decision. He wouldn't explode. He wouldn't scream. He would take control, not for revenge, not for justice, but for Lucas. His son deserved a father who wasn't consumed by anger. So, he wouldn't fight for a marriage that had already been destroyed. He would fight for the only thing that still mattered, his son. Daniel woke up the next morning with a clear mind. The pain was still there, but the anger had settled into something else. Determination. He couldn't change what Sophia had done, but he could control how he responded. And the one thing he wouldn't do was let Lucas suffer because of it. Instead of dwelling on betrayal, he focused on his son. He started planning their weekends with more excitement, taking Lucas to his favorite places, making memories that would last. They went on road trips, explored new parks, and even tried camping for the first time. Lucas thrived under the attention, his laughter filling the spaces that used to feel empty. But even as he smiled for his son, the reality of his marriage weighed on him. Every night, Sophia would return home late, offering the same tired excuses. She barely noticed the changes in him, too wrapped up in her secret life. And Daniel no longer asked. He had stopped waiting for explanations that wouldn't matter. One evening, after a long day out with Lucas, they sat in the living room watching an old movie. Lucas rested his head against his father's shoulder, sleepy but content. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. "Dad, are you happy?" The question caught Daniel off guard. He looked down at his son's innocent face, searching for the right words. "I'm happy when I'm with you," he finally said. Lucas thought for a moment, then nodded. "I like when it's just us." "You don't seem sad then." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. His son saw everything, even the things he tried to hide. He had spent weeks pretending everything was fine, but Lucas had noticed the cracks. And in that moment, Daniel knew there was no point in holding on to a marriage that was already over. That night, he sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the divorce papers he had quietly prepared. He wasn't signing them out of anger or spite. He was signing them because he deserved peace. And more importantly, Lucas deserved a father who wasn't weighed down by heartbreak. Sophia hadn't even realized how much she had lost. But Daniel had. And for the first time in weeks, he felt free. The next morning, Daniel sat across from Sophia at the kitchen table, the divorce papers between them. She looked at them, then at him, confusion flickering across her face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice cautious. "You know what it is," Daniel replied calmly. "It's time." Sophia's expression shifted, first denial, then realization. "Daniel, we don't have to do this." He held up a hand, stopping her. "I know everything, Sophia. I've known for weeks." Her face paled. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time, she had no excuses, no lies. "I didn't want to believe it," he continued, keeping his voice steady. "I told myself I was imagining things, that I was just being paranoid. But the proof was there. And I'm not going to pretend anymore." Sophia exhaled shakily. "I never wanted to hurt you." Daniel let out a bitter chuckle. "Then why did you?" Silence. She looked down, guilt written all over her face. "I don't have an answer for that." "I'm not here for answers," Daniel said. "I'm here to tell you that this is over. We don't need to fight. We don't need to turn this into something ugly. But I won't live in a marriage that doesn't exist anymore." Sophia wiped at her eyes, but Daniel felt nothing. The pain had already passed. Now there was only acceptance. "What about Lucas?" she whispered. "He's my priority," Daniel said. "He always has been. And I hope, for his sake, you'll make him yours too." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she nodded. She knew she had lost more than just a husband. She had lost the trust, the respect, and the love that had once defined their family. That evening, Daniel took Lucas out for ice cream. As they sat on a park bench, the boy happily licking his cone, he looked up at his father. "Dad, Are you still sad? Daniel thought about it for a moment, then smiled. Not anymore, buddy. Lucas grinned. Good. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel truly meant it.